we can start.
All right, Councilman Carlisle, we're ready when you are.
All right. Good morning, colleagues and the public. It is 8:01 a.m., July 21st, and I call to order the Personnel Committee of the Memphis City Council. Ashley, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Canale. Councilman Colvett.
Here.
Councilwoman Easter Thomas.
Present.
Councilman Ford.
Yes. Present.
Councilwoman Johnson.
Present.
Councilman Jones.
Here.
Councilwoman Logan. Councilman Morgan.
Here.
Councilwoman Robinson. Councilman Smiley.
I'm here.
Councilwoman Swearengin.
Present.
Councilman Warren. Councilman Warren. Chair Carlisle.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes, if you'll go ahead and show Councilman Warren present. I know that he was signed on earlier. He may have stepped away.
Got it. Thank you.
Colleagues, good morning. We have one item on this morning's agenda. It was originally posed as a discussion, but if you'll check your emails, an ordinance came forward. I'm happy to handle it however the body would like to. This is, I don't want to call it mundane. Nothing we do is mundane. But this is an HR cleanup item in our reserve officer program. If you'll remember back to some of our budget committee meetings, the reserve officer program came up. There were some questions just about the program in generally, and so I had Ms. Hayes send the original ordinance out to everyone. And and so I can have her send that if everybody would like a base of reference. But one of the things for me that I didn't like about it from a business control standpoint is that the program, first off, I believe the program is beneficial. Well, let me read this into the record, and then we'll get into the discussion. I guess probably the best thing to do. Item number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 30, Article 3 of the Code of Ordinance, City of Memphis by amending the last paragraph in Section 30-39 as it now appears and substituting a new paragraph of 30-39 to require persons eligible for the Police Reserve Program be reviewed by internal audit annually and shall require documentation of the number of duty hours worked annually. And if I could have a motion in a second to begin discussion.
I'll move it for discussion purposes.
I'll second.
Thank you, gentlemen. The item has been moved by Councilman Morgan and seconded by Councilman Jones. I believe Director Rawlings is on if any very specific questions about the program comes forward. But if you go back to the original ordinance, this program was established to, like many sheriff's departments and police officer reserve programs around the country, officers must be between 21 to 45 years old. They receive a specific amount of training annually. The program says no more than 300 officers may participate in the program, and we pay those officers $1 a year, and for that they receive the same health and benefits that our and Chief Smith's on and I'll turn it over here, that our regular officers receive. And I'll let Chief Smith, thank you, I'm glad she's on it, Chief Smith, take it over from here, and then I'll tell you about the amendment that I'd like to make.
Sure, and if a broker actually can give me sharing rights, I can share the document that I shared with council in May about the program. But essentially we have over, I think, 170 in the program right now. They are able to choose our narrow network plan or our select plan as a part of their participation in the program. So we have 179 participants with police reserve status, and they, supplement the work of MPD. They participate in our medical select plan, which is our narrow network plan, and the The plan, we were able to achieve some of the most cost savings, and they're paid $1 for service a year. They do not pay any medical premiums. The reserve officers under the direction of an assigned supervisor, and they are selected through the Memphis Police Department, specifically the police director. And some of the types of assignments that they receive are patrolling, checking building protections, enforcing traffic ordinances, investigating law violations, interviewing witnesses, etc. And to Councilman Carlos' other point, it is in accordance with the city ordinance that this shall be allowed, and the number cannot exceed 300 members in accordance with the ordinance. For the last 3 years, fiscal years, we've had a range of between 150 and 185 in the Police Reserves Program. And when you look at the claims that we're expending, essentially, it's between 1.3 and 1.7 million that we've seen over the last 3 years in terms of claims. And then MPD is essentially covering the premium for the participants at around $2 million per year. And that was baked into the budget this year.
Thank you, Chief Smith. And colleagues, one of the things that I just, again, from a general controls, when you're looking at your HR policies and your policies and procedures for your company is who is approving. So we have some metrics in our ordinance that say you must meet these requirements, but with everything, there needs to be some flexibility in the rules. And Councilman Jones, I think will appreciate this. You get a client that may want to withdraw a large amount. There may be a joint signer on that checking account, and so with this, if you'll go down to basically the middle paragraph in our original ordinance, and I'll just read it again. But it basically says that restrictions and regulations as to the age and physical condition may be waived in the discretion of the director in those cases involving special qualifications, abilities, and aptitude in the best interest of the Police Services Division. I think that's great, but because it makes an impact on HR policy and on our financial impact, I only thought it was fitting to amend that language to say that to read restrictions and regulations as to age and physical condition may be waived only in the discretion and written approval of both the director of the Memphis Police Department and the director of Human Resources in those cases involving special qualifications, ability, and aptitude in the best interest. So there is just a second level of making sure that if we're going to waive that because we are going to allow somebody to not fit into the defined program, that we have somebody else kind of overlooking who we're waiving that for and if they meet those requirements, and it's just a good practice. And then additionally to that, it goes on to say that persons eligible for this program shall be reviewed by internal audit annually, and persons eligible shall require documentation of the numbers of duty hours worked, so that when we come back each year and we're discussing this program and the cost of this program, that we understand that we understand that we're getting a good deal in the sense of paying $1 and giving health insurance, and that those officers are working an amount of hours that meets what the expectations of the programs are. So that is my intent. It is in my mindset more of a personnel cleanup. So I will now move to the queue. I've got Councilwoman Easter Thomas, Councilman Morgan, and then Councilwoman Johnson in the queue. Councilwoman Easter Thomas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, I know it may have been said, but if it can be repeated and explained, what are the duties or responsibilities or purpose of this reserve program? I know you mentioned that there are some all over the country, but why does City of Memphis Police Department need a reserve program?
Sorry, I had a fly. I didn't mean there's a fly that flew to my face and they told me swat the screen. Chief Smith, do you want to take that?
Well, and I definitely want Director Rollins to speak because it is, a longstanding program that's within the Memphis Police Department. But at a high level, it is a program that's suited to help supplement the workforce and to take on things like, as I mentioned, investigations and traffic and things of that nature, to help be able to pivot commission officers towards the most urgent and critical matters, and then use this as a supplemental workforce to help with not as critical items, like, for example, races and things like that, for traffic purposes. And so it can be very helpful in terms of supplementing and ensuring that we're able to keep everything safe. I will pass it to Director Rollins, I think, to give his context from the history of the program.
Thank you. Director Rollins.
Good morning. As you stated, I mean, this program is a 53-year-old program, started in 1967. So my entire career there has been a reserve force. So when you think about the number of events that we work, and there's a laundry list of, I think in 2019, we have to supply manpower to all these events and details and 5Ks, et cetera. The Reserve Bureau worked about 30,857 hours. And so when you talk about African April, the 4th of July, Arts West Festival, Cooper Young Festival, the St. Jude Marathon, we couldn't accomplish that mission without reserves. So that's why we have a reserve program. Again, it was, it's a 53-year-old program established by the charter. So other than the need to support, we talk about our staffing. Every chance I get, I talk about it. Today we're at 2043. We'll graduate a class this week. In the next couple of days, we'll still be under 2,100, way below what we need to do to support our mission. So if we didn't have the reserves, we'd have to pull officers out of patrol duty, where we already have a diminished staff, and take away from response to calls to work these events, or we couldn't host these major events. So that's a major purpose of reserves. We have some assigned to work cold case and homicide, some work traffic, but the majority of use is for these big, large special events that we work all throughout the year. And that's all
Thank
I
you,
have.
Director Rollins. Chair,
You're
can I ask another question?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Are these officers uniformed? Do they have the ability to write tickets, make arrests? Do they have all the same rights as commissioned police officers?
Yes, ma'am. We have a handful of dispatchers that are reserves that work in communications, but the majority of them are uniform officers.
And just for clarification, because sometimes I see them, for the PSTs, what is their role, and do they kind of merge with any officers in the reserve program?
Yes, ma'am. The PST program really was established as a feeder program for the police department. PST has to be 18 years old. Sometimes we'll bring them in. The class that started a few weeks ago, they came in right out of high school. I think all of them are 18 years of age. So the PST program, what we wanted to do is for people that don't have college and that aren't old enough to be a police officer, wanted to allow them to begin a career in law enforcement. And also what you do is you're feeding your own program. So the PST program, Mayor Strickland brought it back in 2016. And, again, we bring these young people in, give them college, let them mature. They answer accident, crash, they do crash reports, they do traffic details, they can write parking tickets. Today, many of them are working some of the testing sites. They're working food distribution sites. Some of them are working in the real-time crime center. They're working in our community outreach program. So the PSTs are an integral part of what we do. And it's a great program because it gives young people that, don't necessarily know what they want to do with their life. They can start at 18 in a career in law enforcement. And again, a number of them, and I don't have the number in front of me, but have finished the PST program and became Memphis police officers. So that was the true purpose of the program. One, opportunity, but the other, it gives us our own ability to grow talent. And, we really call them baby police officers. So they supplement the force. Each year, I think last year we had about 36,000 traffic crashes, and the PSTs help keep a police officer from being tied up on a traffic accident that he would not or she would not need to be on. Is almost exactly what many have been calling for. So when you talk about, taking some of the duties off of a commissioned police officer, that's exactly what the PST program does.
So some of those duties overlap with the reserve officers.
Well, yes and no. So yes, we have to have PSTs to work some of the details also, and sometimes we have officers that work them. If you think that we're budgeted or we can have an approved complement of 300 reserve officers, we only have 205. So not only are we short-staffed in the reserve program, we're also short-staffed in the PST program and in the police officer program. So our staffing challenges mean that everybody does double duty.
Thank you, Director.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Up next, we've got Councilman Morgan and then Councilwoman Johnson, and then colleagues, just keep an eye on the clock. We've got 12 minutes until we're supposed to wrap up.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to confirm a couple of numbers that were said real quick. We have about 170 officers in the reserve program now. Is that correct? And these questions are open for anybody.
176.
176. Do we know how many of them would be affected by the 45 age limit in terms of needing a waiver? How many are over 45 now?
I'd have to check. I mean, a lot of the reserves are long-standing reserve police officers. So, then many of them are formerly commissioned officers. So the 45 is an entry-level requirement. It's not a requirement for a commissioned officer that, may leave and go do something else, or a retiree that wants to be a reserve.
Okay. And Chief Smith, on that healthcare cost that we have in the budget associated with this, so is that healthcare cost really tied directly to these 176 officers in terms of the payouts, or is that some sort of average of what it costs in terms of the claims that are filed that we pay on their behalf? So that $2 million covers those claims for this program.
Right. Covers the claims for the program. So the amount that I showed, is the number of claims attached to the particular individuals. Now that the total cost when you look at HRA, et cetera, that's where you get that inflation to closer to $2 million. But just so you can see kind of what the direct cost is from the claim standpoint, that's what we showed that graph.
Okay. And obviously the program provides a benefit in the number of things that we're able to do in terms of events that we can service, and cold cases, I think, are still a critical part of law enforcement. What is the administration's current thinking on the cost benefit analysis of this, and how we can, is there anything we can do? We have a benefit. Is there anything we can do to reduce the cost? I'm sure there have been conversations about, all of our employees pay some premium, and the city subsidizes it between 70 and 85%, however you do the math. But here they're paying zero premium, and it's, I guess that comes out to being about $11,000 per person in the reserve program per year, somewhere around that. Or $65 an hour for the cost of those 30 30,857 hours that were worked. Is there anything in the works right now or thoughts around that, or are we happy with as the program functions now?
Well, we're always looking at how we can evolve and improve things. And of course, we've had discussions intently during the budget season around the healthcare and the need for us to reshape and think about how we look at the plan design and the premiums for healthcare. So we are in conversations about that. And Director Rollins and I just need to, kind of align on where we think the program should be from a healthcare standpoint. At the end of the day, whatever we, do for the overall employee population in terms of where the premiums and plan design is, the reserves will also be impacted. And just to say, we also have a number of other agencies that are not employed by the city of Memphis that are part of our healthcare plan. So there's the airport, there's the Downtown Memphis Commission, there's others. So, this is kind of an overall review that we have to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilwoman Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, so much. Before I begin, let me first say to Director Smith, your sound is not clear on my end. I don't know if it's just me at my site. Is anybody else having the same problem? Right. So if there's any way to work on that, I appreciate it, because I really missed half of your presentation due to that fact. I have a follow-up question in regards to what Worth Morgan asked. We talked about the cost factor, being that you have 176. What type of process is being used to make certain that all officers are given the equal amount of time? We may have maybe 100 doing all the work, and then you have the other 76 not participating. How do you monitor that, please?
Yes, ma'am. Each one is required to do 288 hours. If someone wants to work more, they can, but each one of them is required to work 288 hours.
Okay, I got you. And then this question goes back to the chair. Chair, where is this ordinance? Am I supposed to have it in an email, or what's in my package?
Yes, ma'am. It was emailed this morning, and that's my fault, not my staff's. It should be in your email now. Again, for me, this was a minor change to add additional oversight should there be a member of the reserve program that doesn't fit the defined program as it's written in the original ordinance, to have the director of police and the director of human resources sign off on waiving those requirements. And then it adds language to have an annual internal audit of the program and the hours each officer's work, so that when the council comes to budget season, that information is readily available. So it's just, again, for me, I viewed it as just kind of a minor HR policy cleanup.
Okay, I think I can support that. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. There's time if you're you withdrawn. Okay. All right, colleagues, could I have I guess we'll move this for a vote to go down in 2 weeks for first reading. Ashley, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Covett,
Yes.
Councilwoman Easter Thomas,
Yes.
Councilman Ford,
Yes.
Councilwoman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Jones,
Aye.
Councilwoman Logan, Councilman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson, Councilman Smiley,
Aye.
Councilwoman Swearingen,
Aye.
Councilman Warren,
Aye.
Chair Carlisle.
Aye. This item will go downstairs with a positive recommendation for first reading in 2 weeks. Colleagues, seeing no other business before this body, the Personnel Committee is hereby adjourned.